Hello and welcome to Into Your Life podcast. I'm Lenka and I'm joined here by my wonderful co-host Natalie.
Hi, we invite you to join our weekly conversations about finding more life in one's life.
Well, what does it actually mean?
We have discussions with guests about ways to live happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives, both personally and professionally.
That sounds great. Let's go.
So we've often spoken about self-care on the podcast. Lenka and I are looking at it, we're learning about it, we are bringing some self-care into our own lives, and we are having our own journeys with it. And when I came across Laura, who knows about self-care, and I'm going to call her the self-care expert because this is our podcast, we can do that, I was so excited because I thought instead of having Lenka and I just talking and having a conversation and on our journey, let's get somebody who's actually looking into it, who's really dug deep into it, who's through life experiences has had to really embrace the idea of self-care. So welcome, Laura. I'm so excited to have you here with us and to guide us, teach us, and explain to us, why is self-care important? Why do we need to really embrace the idea of self-care, and what can we do for self-care? So to start with, just say hi, introduce yourself, and welcome.
Thank you, Natalie and Lenka. Thank you very much for having me here. Happy to be here. I am Laura Cross, as you said. I've had quite the journey. I'm Air Force veteran, blue collar worker turned entrepreneur. So it's been quite the journey. My journey started when I lost my husband 18 years ago. And that's when I learned life was too short to spend my time answering to other people. And that's how I got onto this, this journey. So I do run, I did start in travel. I am a certified travel agent. So I did do that because people need to get away. I mean, and when COVID scared the snot out of everybody for traveling everywhere. And I'm like, well, the reason I want people to get away is because I want them to reset and, experience so many things. Being locked up, in your home and go, what I call a rat race. I don't care what you're in, whether you're an entrepreneur or military, whatever, it's one rat race or another. And we get so caught up in it, we stop taking care of ourselves. And so I kind of really morphed over to self-care. So I created White Sands Self-Care LLC. I run a community Facebook group, which I invite anybody to be a part of, because I really want people to know that there's support out there for you. And so it's to introduce everybody, for them to meet, and do that. Because there's so many people that think self-care is selfish. And for whatever reason, that gets ingrained in us. I have no idea why, but it's not. I mean, if you have flown somewhere, I'll use the example most people know is when you're on the airplane, when they tell you if something's going to happen and those oxygen masks drop, you put yours on first and then you help somebody else, because you can't help people if you're passed out, and I tell people I'm more of a car person, it's kind of like, driving your car around, topping your oil off all the time and never changing the oil. If you don't do something to keep that maintenance up, you're going to seize up your engine. Well, your body is the same way. And if you're like I used to, and I am still very heart-centered and very much a caregiver and stuff, but I used to be the caregiver and the people pleaser to the point that myself always went on the back burner. And when you do that, you burn out and you don't process things very well at all. I was 37 at the time. My husband and I, we were laughing at lunch and he was dead by 10 o'clock that night. He was 36 years old. That was a real wake-up call for me.
That is, and like you said, it's so sudden. Life is too short, and it just shows how 1 minute you're laughing at the lunch table and the next minute that person is gone. And what do you do? How do you essentially survive? So what is self-care? What is and I love your analogy of the oil in an engine. I love cars as well, and it makes a lot of sense. We need to keep looking. We here in the UK especially, we have to take our cars once a year to go have an MOT. And you have to do it to get your insurance, get your road tax and everything. You essentially have to have an MOT on your engine. Don't ask me what MOT stands for. I don't know. I just know it as MOT. But you take your car in, you book it in, it goes through a variety of tests, and then you can renew your insurance and get your road tax. But we don't MOT ourselves. We don't look after ourselves. We just keep going and going until the engine blows up and doesn't work anymore, seizes up. So what is self-care? What does that mean? I mean, it's such a big, huge word and everybody's saying it. What is self-care?
It actually encompasses a lot of things. Self-care is actually you taking an active role in doing something to protect your own well-being, mentally, physically, emotionally. It's self-care. I always tell people, everybody associates, oh, that's spas, bubble baths, massages. I'm not saying those are not good things. They are, but it's not for everybody. My fiance, self-care for him is to go out and work on the race car. It's doing something that you enjoy. We've all, I think, gone through life. I mean, I used to love, and I still have all the stuff. I haven't got rid of it, but I haven't got back to it. I love cross stitch. I used to sit and do cross stitch all the time. You get electronics and then you start getting attached to your electronics. And next thing you know, you're tired. That day's gone. What happened to some of the simpler things? It's like we're in that go, go, go mode. Everybody wants things yesterday. But sometimes, and it's a hard concept for people to understand, you need to slow down to move forward. When you keep going, you just start banging your head against a wall. You got so many things running in your head that you can't think straight. I love telling people, because I used to say, hey, I'm great at multitasking. Well, that's a myth. Okay. It truly is a myth. Multitasking is a myth, because what all your brain is really doing is constantly switching from one thought to the other. You're really not focused on one. So you might think you're getting more done, but it may not be done properly or the way it should be. It's really haphazardly getting done, because you're not focused. But if you slow down and you just say, I need to do this first, you get it done, choop, celebrate your win. Hey, got it done. Move on to something else. We stack up all these lists and we're so quick to say, oh, well, I should have done this. I should have done that. What about stopping and saying, hey, I got this done. I got that done. I'm good. I celebrate your wins. No one ever takes time to do that. We are great at putting ourselves down, or, we're our worst critics, really. We really are. How many times has someone maybe told you, oh, you look beautiful today? And you're like, oh, well, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. What about just saying thank you and accepting it? We're just like so quick to, it's just a whole different, it's a whole different world, a whole different meaning. When I went back to school because I had some benefits from my late husband to go back to school. So I did. Well, I kind of freaked because I haven't been in school for 30 years. And now I'm like, oh, they're talking about this writing, that style. I'm like, you had that back in the 80s. Well, okay, I'm not remembering it, but if I fail, I'm going to be paying the government back for school. So I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. Reading chapters. Now I'm writing 2 papers. I'm reading 70, 80 pages a week. And you're looking at a person that really did not like to read, especially when you're forced to read things that you have to and you don't really want to. But I would sit there and I was getting so locked up through my shoulders, through my neck, the tension, the stress, it was great when you got it done, but I'm sitting here and I'd keep erasing. I'd write something, I'd race, I'd write. And the frustration, the stress, the anxiety, everything built. But if I got up and I walked away, even if it was only for 5 or 10 minutes, immerse yourself in something you enjoy, whether it's gardening, playing with the dog, enjoying your surroundings, do something. And then all of a sudden, it's like, poof, light bulb count. Why did I make that so hard? And you could actually go back and finish it, deadline or not, and it actually gets finished on time. So that's why, I mean, you kind of have to slow down sometimes to go forward, or know when to walk away. Sometimes you just have to walk away.
And you are definitely speaking our language. I got this from Lenka. She always says shoulding all over yourself. I've used that a lot now. And as you said, multitasking is your brain jumping from backwards and forwards. Is not focusing on two things. It's trying to focus on two things separately instead of together. So I really love that. And of course, to celebrate your wins. That is so powerful, and it's a great way to really start to acknowledge, you know what, I'm good enough. I got this. I can do it. And I love your example of, having that stress of trying to write these papers and read, and just giving yourself that 5-10 minutes to walk away and do something different, to literally physically walk away from the problem, do something else, and come back. And while you've been away, in the background, your brain has most probably been percolating this idea, getting it, that when you come back and sit down, it's like, oh my God, why did I make it so complicated? I got this. And I love how you really gave that example, because how often do we as business owners or solopreneurs just push through instead of taking that break? And that can be such an important self-care process. Just literally walk away from the problem, get up off your desk, go downstairs, go outside, go make a cup of tea, go just stand in the garden for 5 minutes, play with the dog. Whatever it is giving yourself that time. And I love how you really brought all of this together with your examples and your experiences.
Yeah. And the fact that you mentioned the solopreneurs, most of the reasons we went into business for ourselves was to have more time freedom, to be able to do what we want and do the stuff. But how many of us are like, oh my God, I worked so hard to create this. I can't leave. I can't do this, or this is going to fall apart. When I launched Mindful Mondays, I launched that TV show because I wanted to take self-care and get it out to the masses, to try and get people to understand that we need to be proactive and not reactive. I know the US is really bad about reacting. We just go until tragedy strikes. And then, oh my God, okay, we could have done something different. Well, what about changing before that happens? Because it really helps you deal with tragedy better. And I'm guilty. When I went to launch that, I put stuff up, and next thing I know, boom, everybody, I had 4 or 5 people a day. I'm on Zooms all day. And I'm like, okay, I had a half-hour gap. But when you're trying to take care of a pup or go eat or do something, next thing you know, the whole day is gone. Never really got a chance to eat, especially if one meeting ran over a little bit and then into the other one. And then, okay, well, great. Now it's like fend for yourself, because I didn't get to make dinner. So it's just, so I had to dial it back. I'm like, oh no, I didn't do this to ruin my own self-care. I had to go into that calendar and say, all right, only no more than 2 meetings on this day, only more than 1 recording on this day. I had to dial it back, for my own sanity. I mean, we completely moved states for the change of environment in the name of self-care and our own sanity. I wasn't going to go back into getting that locked up. But unless you've practiced self-care a lot, and I think, and you've had the chance to experience it, sometimes you don't recognize the damage that you're doing. And you go. I mean, I've got people all the time that, some of them I already know, they're not going to jump on 10 minutes beforehand if we're going to do a recording to see what their camera looks like, because they have packed their meetings up, boom, 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 and they jump on last minute. I'm like, I like a few minutes to clear my head, focus on one thing, and not have my full attention with them, because I'm still reeling on something else or worrying about what I have to do next. Like I said, it's a different rat race. You need different, still need self-care no matter what you do.
And you touched on that point, is having to actually go into your calendar and have 2 Zooms that day. one Zoom that day, and it is about diarizing your self-care. It's not something that just happens automatically, like breathing, you just get on with it. You've actually got to put that time in your diary and then honor that time. It's one
And you
thing
have to put
putting
your
the time.
self-care in your diary. You have to put your self-care in. My phone is locked out from 7 to 10 a.m. every morning. Now, obviously, I make exceptions when we have stuff like this because we got time zones to deal with, but it's an exception. It's not the rule. But normally 7 to 10 is my time to wake up, play with the dog, do whatever I feel I need to do to just whoop before I start my day. I don't want to look at emails before 10 a.m. because I don't want to shoot from the hip and answer something and really not be clear because I'm tired and maybe I misread something. You know, we're so quickly to say, oh, we got to respond. We got to respond. Well, what about taking a few minutes and digesting it? Because sometimes when you shoot off at the hip and then you have to backtrack because maybe you didn't read it right or it gets misconstrued. It's okay to take those few minutes to say, okay, I'll respond in a little bit. I need to digest and think about it.
And you're right. I think we've really very much in a world where it's instant responding. You know, your phone pings, oh, I've got to respond. Your email, oh, I've got to respond now. And quite often I think, well, do they really know that you're not responding straight away? And I've had to learn this is my phone's on silent all the time. So whenever I lose it, it's hell to try and find it because I can't ring it to find it. But I will respond to WhatsApp messages, text message, or anything when I'm in the space to do it. And the same with emails is I respond. I have certain times of day where I do check my emails mostly. Sometimes they tend to vanish in the ether, I think, but
Mm-hmm.
I then tend to have certain periods where I'll check emails. So if you send an email that's out of that period, I won't get to it because I'm not in that space to do it. I have certain times when I do Zoom calls because that's when I know that I am most able to do a Zoom. I guess my brain is more functioning
Sure.
that way. But like you said, there are exceptions. There are times when, okay, because of time zones or because of commitments or something, yes, you've got to come out of it. But that's not the norm. It's the exception.
Right.
But
You
you
just got
also
to not let the exception become the norm or become the rule. But that's also part of another self-care thing, which is setting boundaries, setting healthy boundaries. I mean, you guys all have stores. They're open certain hours. Do you think they care if you didn't get there on time? Are they going to stay open late for you? Well, as an entrepreneur, you need to do the same thing. You need to set your hours and you need to let people know, hey, these are my hours. This is when I will get back to you. And they need to respect that. And you need to, once you start making a whole bunch of exceptions and then it gets out, then you have this gray area, then you're struggling and people, but if you went to a store, they're not going to stay open for you. So why should you be doing every waking hour when you're supposed to have that quality time with your family? Are you interrupting the quality time with your family trying to still function with business? You have to set boundaries.
and creating those habits is making a habit of as you said the boundaries, and it's actually making that habit. It's the same as whether you want to get fit or change the way that you eat. You create the habit, but it's difficult. It's not something that just happens overnight. You've actually got to plan it, and we mentioned about diarizing it. Put in that time. Business, end of day business, no more Zoom calls, or this is time for me, I'm going to go for a walk in nature. Lenka loves her walks. She loves her long walks and going out into nature and the mountains. So you put that into the diary. It's really finding what works, but finding what works for you and having your own routine. Like you say, you between 7 and 10 in the morning, that's your time. That is essentially me time.
Yep.
This is where I do what I need to do in order to function for the rest of the day. And it's about finding what works for each individual, because 7 till 10 won't work for me because that just won't work for me. I'm not you, and
Right.
I find my own time. And I think this is the one great thing about being a solopreneur is you can create your own times. if you have a job and you're told be there at 8 in the morning and you will leave at 5, it's difficult to say, yes, but I think I'd rather turn up at 10, thank you, you know. And it is about finding your own time. And as solopreneurs, we have that advantage to say, okay, between 10 in the morning and 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I don't want to be working, or I want a 3 to 5. That's my time, because that's the way my body clock works. And I love how you've really explained that we need to set those boundaries and really give this time to ourselves.
Yeah, because if you think about it, I've known other people that are entrepreneurs and they do that. And okay, so maybe your working hours are 9 to 5. That's fine. You still don't have to pack everything in back to back because you're so scattered, you're running late, you spend half your time apologizing, and then you're not answering. You work so hard to build your client base, but if you're not there to respond to your clients, then you're going to always be filling that client base because you're going to lose them. You're going to lose people if they feel like, well, you can never get an answer out of them, or they don't ever respond. If you tell them, hey, within 24, 48 hours, and stuff, great. But if you've gone days and you have to say, hey, did you still send me oh, sorry, I forgot. We did this to create time and to create business. But if you don't create those boundaries, even during your day and your schedule, you're going to always be looking for more clients and trying to fill that because you didn't give them their full attention. It's kind of like when people talk about filling the funnel. Well, that's great. But if you don't treat those people with respect, you're going to keep filling the funnel because you're going to lose people just as fast as you're pulling them in. And then that's a whole nother different rat race. But, we don't stop to think about that. We just keep going, going, going. I've worked with a couple of people, fantastic people, love them, but they took on so much and so many projects and they started going in so many different ways that I'm like, okay, I can't do this now because I can't ever get answers, or I couldn't get something fixed. And, so sometimes I wound up taking those things back on myself, but then I had to adjust my schedule because I can't take on everything and still be what I want to be, fully present for whoever I'm working with. And so there's a balance. It takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. You make little tweaks. Everybody's like, oh, can't do that. Well, if you tell yourself you can't do that, you're correct. You've already shot yourself in the foot because all your subconscious is thinking about now is that you can't do that. But if you think about how can I do that, you will get your subconscious to start to work more towards, all right, how can we do that and find that balance? Start with a few minutes here or there, kind of see how it feels and see maybe you have to get up a few minutes earlier just to have a few minutes to zoom, to just zoom out, whatever you need to do, gather yourself up. Puppy. It's, and then you build. I didn't start out with saying I'm blocking out 3 hours. I started with, I have these self-care, self-help, motivational books. A lot of them are people I have now met, known, I have them personally signed. So that even piques my interest even more. Because for me, I can actually kind of hear their voice when I read the book. And, so I would start that, but sometimes it would take me a little bit longer. Well, then my little half hour went to an hour and I'm like, okay, if I need to trim it back or change things around, I can do that. But that's my time to help work on myself, learn different perspectives because we are all different and we all have different perspectives. I don't expect what works for me to work for somebody else, but know that you need to start somewhere. I mean, I'm sure we all have things that we've loved to do, but we've gotten so far removed from it. Why did we stop doing it? It brings you so much joy and peace. Why did we stop doing it? We stopped making time to do it.
And that's very much the crux of it, isn't it? It's I don't have time. Oh, I can't fit it into my day. Oh, I'm so busy. I just can't manage it. I cannot visualize where's the time, how, and it we have this idea that we have to be busy. If we're not busy 18 hours a day, oh, I'm not doing what I'm meant to be doing. And this idea of time, it's I don't have time to do it. And this is something that I often hear. It's yes, but I'm too busy, I don't have time. Are you too busy and you don't have time? And I've sometimes noticed myself even thinking, oh, that project, I just don't have the time for it. Then I think, Well, actually, I do. If I really look at it, I do have the time. It's just fitting it in around something else that I'm most probably doing that I could not be doing at that time or something. And it's about balancing and just thinking, well, I don't have the time, is looking at your day and thinking, when would I put it in? If this project needs doing, how long will it take? When when can I do it? Because when will my brain be dealing with it the best? If you're tired at night, then don't do big creative projects. Whereas if you're buzzing at night, do your big creative projects then. It's also finding, when do I do something for me that it works for me. But this idea that we don't have time, I think it's very much, it's been ingrained in us, most probably from the 80s and the 90s, is go 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 go. And now we all like, oh my, it's it's like we all shell shocked. We can't go anymore. We need to step back, we need to stop, we need to just stretch projects out, stretch things out. And if sometimes it's just not working, why isn't it working? Why am I overtired? Why am I dropping balls or plates? Because I've stretched myself and I'm not listening to myself. Okay, how do I get back on track? Because it's, as I said, we need to create the habits, but it's
Mhm.
also really easy to break those habits and to think, oh well, I'll just do it. Oh yeah, I'll just, and then next minute it's like, hang on a minute, I thought I had done something, I haven't done it. I'm just, what's going on? And you regroup. It's almost like, just take that moment and regroup. Okay, what happened? I didn't listen to myself. I just let those boundaries go. Those habits went bye-bye out the window. Okay, how do I get them back? Because the great thing is, we are human. We will make mistakes. We will break habits. We are human.
Mhm.
But the great thing is, we can get it back. We can put those boundaries back in place. We can get those habits back in place. We can do it. We just got to give ourselves, yeah,
Yep.
I got this. How do I start again?
Yeah, you absolutely can. And it, like you said, it's all about that balance. Yeah, there you touched on a couple of things there. You know, I think you're probably 80s. I consider myself an 80s child, you know. I graduated in the 80s. If you're that Gen X and, you know, baby boomers or later, we're used to taught to go to school, go get a degree, go to work. You do this, you do everything you have to make ends meet. And then we turn around and look at today's kids like they're so lazy. Well, no, they've been watching us come home stressed out, tired, sick. They don't want that. They've, you know, and we have all this digital stuff. So a lot of them have learned to work smarter, not necessarily harder, you know, and we wait until tragedy strikes, you know, something happens. Like when my father had a massive stroke, that's it, done, drop everything. I go because my family comes first, you know, guess what? All my stuff was still waiting for me a week, 2 weeks later when I came home. It's not going anywhere. So it is about that balance. And when you have such a long list of things to do, maybe it's more like it's not that you don't necessarily have time, because really you don't you don't have time not to take care of yourself. You really need to take care of yourself. But you know, when you have all these projects, is it you don't have time or it's really not that important? You know, look at it, because if it's really not that important, okay, put it on the back shelf. Don't bother yourself about the fact that you didn't do it. And that goes back to celebrating your wins. But then there's the other stress of you're putting something off because it's something you really don't necessarily want to do. And it's like a black cloud hanging over your head. So that is when I would say move that to the front, sit yourself down, block everything else, and get it done. Because otherwise, that constant black cloud leaves a whole different kind of stress, anxiety, just because you got it hanging over you. So, you know, just get it done. I think a big part of self-care too is being, you know, is to drop the judgment, be judgment free. I like creating judgment free spaces for people because, like I said, we are different. We are all different individuals. If somebody wants to live in a tiny house, great, let's help you figure out how to get there. It's not for me. I don't necessarily need a huge house. I don't want all that to clean anymore. we downsized when we moved here, but you get what I mean. Everybody's different, and it's not for me to judge why would they want to do that. It's, when I work with people, it's okay, how do we help you get there? It's what fits you. Now, when they want steps, so sure, we can try different techniques. You got to try different stuff to find out what works for you. It's not a one size fits all. There's nothing in this world that I know of that's a one size fits all. And if people think it is, they're very much mistaken. So, because we are individuals for a reason, and we're all different.
And I think you touched on it a few times, that one of the misconceptions around self-care is that it's always the positive stuff, that it's all the fluffy, fuzzy, good, wonderful, enjoyable, relaxing stuff. But sometimes self-care, it's the difficult stuff. It's the things we don't want to be doing. The going to the gym, getting up earlier, drinking water, whatever it is, it's the difficult stuff that we don't want to be doing, we don't particularly enjoy, but thinking about the future, thinking about what is the vision that we have, what is the purpose, why are we doing the things, realizing our dreams and desires, and wanting longevity and long health and long enjoyable life. There are certain things we should, and again, it's a shoulding, not necessarily should, but if we really want to live a long, happy, healthy, fulfilling life, and self-care often needs to include things that are not so fun.
Yep. There's lots of things to deal with. It took me years. And I always tell people there is no time frame when it comes to grief and certain things. You have to deal with it in your own way. I have known people that can lose a spouse, turn around and go to work the next day. Me, I took their 7 days of bereavement. I went back to work. I was working nights, which is normally not normal for people, but nights paid more money. And, we needed to make ends meet, because when we moved back to Colorado, they flat out told us we got paid 36% under what it takes to live there. So regardless, I had to pick up something, and I picked up a night job because it was the most, money. So we were already like 2 ships that pass in the night. So I'm doing that. And it's quiet because there's not a lot of people that work overnights. Gives you time to think. Well, by the time I'm driving home, I'm so tired. And maybe I've talked to people because people politely asked what happened, and I explained to them, I'm falling asleep driving home. And I fell asleep twice briefly. I pulled the car back. I woke up, I pulled the car back, but I could have hit somebody head on. My whole world to me just crashed and shattered. I never thought that would happen. I was 37, he was 36. And after they took me out, I wound up going out on short-term leave. I was out for a good 45 days before I came back. And I'm not big on drugs, but they put me on antidepressants and something to help me sleep. The antidepressants they wanted me on for a year. And I think it did help me think things differently. But after that was done, that was it. I didn't do any more medications, didn't want them. I didn't like the side effects because I was on painkillers and muscle relaxers before my husband passed away from my back, and didn't realize the side effects, what that had done and ruined parts of our relationship that could have been better. I made him feel like something was wrong with him because I just, I was in so much pain, don't touch me kind of thing. And it caused a lot of strain. So I won't ever use those. And the more people I meet, I find that there's more holistic things that we can do out there for our self-care. And again, everybody's different, but we have frequency healing. I've met a gentleman now that can use scalar energy, and heal people through scalar energy and scalar light and photographs. And it's, worked for people. We have that innate ability to actually help fix ourselves. Again, that's part of self-care. You got to find what works for you. There's all kinds of things out there. I'm not saying medicine doesn't have its place, but I've never felt healthier, and I don't, I might take an allergy pill once in a while if I even have to do that. But there are so many things out there, which is why I love building the platform of bringing people together to say, hey, there's options out here. You know, every speaker that I have that comes on Mindful Mondays and talks may not resonate with you, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be someone else. It's like, hey, I didn't even know about that. I should try that. There's so much out there, and I love it because I get to meet people from all over, you know. That's a huge part of it. There's so much outside our door, and there's so many people that just stay locked in their area and don't go somewhere. You know, sorry, kind of went a little bit off, but it's so important. There's just so much out there. There's so much good knowledge and resources. And that's why I love building the self-care communities to say, hey, let's find out what works with you, or who you resonate with, you know, because a lot of times we need those different coaches, because we're going to resonate with that person or what they've been through, and then say, oh, well, that person gets me. You know, because not everybody you're sent to are you going to resonate with. You know, they did send me to a psychologist to kind of help me get through the grieving with my husband. They gave me 6 sessions. I will tell you, I only went 5 times. It was great for me, for the point that I had someone to talk to that didn't feel like they know me and understood what I'm going through. But when he wanted me to write a letter to my husband telling him goodbye, that just didn't sit well. It just didn't resonate. It didn't sit well with me. I'm like, yep, okay, done. I got it. I kind of looked at it as he went TDY, which for the military, that's a temporary duty assignment, and he just wasn't coming back. I had to figure out my own way to, you know, to justify it. But, you know, when you have people that come up and say, oh, I understand what you're going through. I got divorced. You want to reach out and just slap them. I'm like, I understand there's, you know, some shame in the grief process and stuff, but that's what I'm talking about. Like, you know, no judgment. I really learned not to judge. You know, we just lost my father in January. And even though it's losing my father, for my mom, it's losing her spouse, and I've lost my spouse. I can relate to what she's going through, cannot understand it, because their relationship is different. Just because she lost a spouse and I lost a spouse does not mean I understand. And I think we throw that word out there too much too, all the time, saying, oh, I understand. No, because you're not me. You don't know exactly how I feel. You might know how you think I feel, or you think you know me, but you know, it's different. So sometimes I think we need to just dial back and kind of think about our thoughts or our words before we just, you know, let them out. And that comes to the no judgment part. And I think that's a huge part in self-care. I think we have way too much judgment going around. It damages people's self-image, their self-confidence, because you start getting these little voices going. Ever since I have practiced more and more self-care, and when I moved here, I literally drowned myself in self-care. It took me a little bit to say, okay, I need to get back to business now, because I was just loving my my new environment. I'm not saying it makes things less tragic when they happen, but you can deal with them better. You know, you can handle things better. It's not such a, it's not like, you know, smacking into a wall, whatever you want to call it. I felt like my whole world crashed when my husband, and it took me years, but, I've learned to look at things, I guess, differently, feel differently. It helps me process things differently, kind of clearer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, and there's so much to unpack, and so many different areas we could go into this conversation further. But one theme that kind of keeps coming back to me is this idea of prevention versus just getting to self-care when it's too late, when we are hitting burnout, where the tragedy strikes us or anything like that. And I think hopefully more and more people are realizing that traditional Western medicine, it's really good with dealing with problems once they happen, but they're not designed to deal with problems and prevent them. And I've been learning a lot about, all sorts of illnesses and how to prevent them, and how to make sure that, again, we have the longevity, we live as long, as happily and healthily as we can. And lots of those things go back to prevention. It goes to taking responsibility over your own life, not depending on the doctors and the experts to tell you what you should be doing and waiting for them to notice signs that something is not going well, and maybe you should, change your diet, get some exercise, sleep better, whatever it is. And it is taking over the responsibility to start early. And I'm in my early 30s, and I think like it's in your 20s, okay, it's early, potentially you're young, you're all over the place, but the moment I think you hit 30, you're like, okay, let me take my health span, my longevity seriously, and start working on prevention. And you mentioned that you have lots of guests coming, lots of experts, there's lots of modalities. If we're looking at this holistic spectrum of body, mind, emotion, soul, all of it, it is a lot. It is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So could we maybe simplify? And if we say self-care 1-on-1, 5, 3, 10, I don't want to put a specific number, but the essentials that people can start looking at when it comes to self-care and prevention and health and well-being, from your experience, are there any areas that we can highlight like this?
Yeah. And just really quick, just so, like you said, Western medicine, it has its place, but it truly is a Band-Aid. It may make you feel better at the time, but if you don't look within and figure out what's going on, you're going to keep needing that Band-Aid. And when that one doesn't work, they're going to throw a different one at you. It really comes from within. So, and it is prevention. So, educate yourself, for one, as to what's out there. Doctors are great, but sometimes you get put in that queue and it's just boom, 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 on to the next one. If you educate yourself, you have the questions to ask them. And if you don't agree with it, you can say no, you don't have to. But when it comes to self-care, the most important things, I think, is, for one, try to stop judging yourself, judging others. Stop the self-judgment. Be more conscious about it. Look for the positives. It is very, I would have told some people that there was nothing positive about my husband dying. Took me years. But after working with a business coach, had my husband not passed away, I would not be on this path or learned about self-care or how I could help others through this. I would still be working one job or another in that same rat race trying to make ends meet. It totally changed the trajectory of my life. And so when things started getting the way we didn't like him in Colorado, and I could see it on my fiance's face, I'm like, oh no, we have a choice. I'm not saying everybody needs to sell their home, pick up and move to a totally different place, but sometimes you need to. Doesn't have to be that drastic. It can be the small things, but recognizing the symbols and realizing that you always have a choice. The choice is yours. If you're not making a choice, guess what? You just made a choice. You made a choice not to. Everybody says, oh, well, I don't know. You do. You're making a choice by not choosing. You have a choice. You have control of you, what you do, and what you perceive. Everything else that's going on in the world, or someone else, I always called it NMP, not my problem, doesn't mean I don't care, but I can't take on everybody else's problem because it's theirs to fix. I can be supportive, I can give tips, I can give techniques, but ultimately you are in control of you. And you can't control others. You can't even control your spouse, what they think. Let it go. It causes a whole lot of stress when you're trying to control everything out there. You don't have control over it. So why let that eat away at you and stress and be in that negative, constant, tensed up mode? So try to stay positive, control you and control what you can control. And create those boundaries. You definitely want to create those boundaries. And the other thing I would say, the one big thing, I know we haven't really talked about it, but surround yourself with people that are positive and that support you. If they're going to be there constantly telling you, well, why are you doing that? Or you can't do that, let them go. When you start surrounding yourself with other people that see your vision, support you, they don't necessarily have to understand it, but they're supportive. That's what you need. And then the rest of them fall off. Most of them get all judgy and say you can't do that because they wish they could do something like that, but they can't. But let two people get back in down what I call the pity pool. And then you get caught up in that drama. And guess what? You don't get anywhere and you don't need it. It's not healthy. I was always so caring and always trying to take care of everybody else that I took on other people's problems. I had enough issues really of my own, but I was like drowning in everybody else's. That was not self-care. That was not self-care. So set those boundaries, surround yourself with people that are positive, that support you. Create that me time, even if it's just a few minutes a day, and start creating that balance. Habits take time. They're not going to happen overnight. Don't get frustrated if they don't. And make sure you take time to celebrate the little wins, even if it's the fact that you just woke up out of bed and you're breathing. That's a good start. Not everybody does that, but that's a good start. So even at the smallest wins, it might seem silly, but celebrate them, because we don't take enough time to celebrate our wins and the positives. We're always looking at what we didn't get done and what we did do. Why don't we look at what we did do? It puts you in a totally different mindset, mind frame.
You touched on a big one with the people around us, because we often think of self-care as something that we do for ourselves. And obviously we can look at it from the lens, are you an introvert and are you an extrovert, which means you need either less or more time with people, and that will obviously play a role in how you choose to prioritize your self-care. But overall, especially since the pandemic, we're realizing how much we really need people around us, how much social creatures we are, and being in community and surrounded by people and having loving, positive, supportive people around us, how essential it is. And be it deep, meaningful relationships, or be it more superficial, small talk, kind of a random chats, but still having those human interactions. Those all are essential. But I think one of the areas that you kind of touched on with setting boundaries and choosing people that bring us joy and support us and are positive and don't drag us down and don't judge us. It could be difficult, especially when some of those people are close friends that have been with us for a really long time, and out of nowhere we are changing and they don't like that and they don't support that. Or even worse, if it's a family, because there is obviously such a strong connection that we have with family. And there is still this feeling that family is always has to be part of your life because it's blood connection. That blood is, the thing that holds us together. And then if someone decides to separate themselves and put boundaries or detach from a family, that's not okay. And cutting people out of your life is not okay. While it's essential to, again, looking at it from the perspective of, if I'm setting boundaries and potentially removing, I don't need to remove them completely. If I have to, obviously I will, but sometimes just minimizing the amount of time I spend with someone, rather than going for weekly coffees, go once per month and every 2 months. Instead of having a daily calls, try to eliminate it. But I think this was such an important point that you brought up, it's with the people that we surround ourselves with.
And it is difficult, very difficult when it comes to family too. Because I was raised in a family that family is everything, and my immediate family is very close. When you start getting into distant family, okay, not so much. But there's a time when you have to look is, okay, if you're going to an event and you're really dreading it, you really don't want to go, but you're going because you think you have to. You can either politely make an excuse or have a conversation with them, and say, hey, look, I'm really not comfortable, or it's not my thing. But be honest. I think a lot of times we're not open and honest. We keep those things bottled up until eventually it explodes. When I was doing the travel and stuff, I said to one of my upline one time, I'm like, oh my God, it's like everybody is like full of drama. I'm like, why do I always attract, why these people always find me? He goes, it's not them. He goes, it's you. And I was like, okay. And he recommended a book. It's by Florence Shim. I'll probably mess up the name of it, but it's something about, the game of life and how we play it, kind of a thing. And I started reading that. I'm like, Okay. So I kind of just started politely when people started getting into their drama, acknowledged it, but kind of shut it down. I didn't go there. I didn't keep feeding it. And, eventually they just kind of dropped off. And I call it sorting themselves out. They will sort themselves out. It's not that you don't care, but don't need that in my life. I've acknowledged what they've had, but I'm not going to engage in it. And when you don't engage in it because that's what they want, they start to sort themselves out. Because are you doing something out of a sense of obligation? Is it causing you more stress and anxiety to go? And if you are you really showing up, even if it's for your family? Are you really showing up as your best self? Or because you are so anxious, are you just ready to jump down somebody as soon as they open? And then what good was the function? So there's, again, we're back to balance. But and it is tough because love my family, always been there. But then there's some distant families that, okay, yeah, we really don't see eye to eye, don't even know about things. All right. But you have to protect yourself and your sanity. You've got your life to live. There's ways to go about it. You don't have to necessarily be rude. Now, if they don't want to listen or they don't want to see from your perspective, maybe it wasn't the right time, just politely make those excuses and kind of start, creating some space. But you need to for yourself. If you don't, even you show up those functions, you're not going to show up the way you want to. You could wind up saying something that you may totally regret. And once you say it, you can't take it back. You can apologize up and down. You may make things better over time, but the fact is that it was said, that's still stuck. It's out there. There's no pulling that back.
We have covered so much, and I love this. It is about the people and separating yourself or giving that space between those family members that are just not, I guess, on the same wavelength or are bringing you down, and friends that you've known for years. It is about creating that space, because one thing is, you might feel that you might look at it as losing friends and family, but you might gain some new friends and, dare I say, family moving forward, because as you change, you will start to connect with others who are on the same wavelength or in the same support, and they might just have what you need. So it's not necessarily about losing, but about making that space for new people to come into your life. And I love that we touched on it. And I really appreciate your time. I mean, we can talk for hours on this. Self-care is such a massive topic. But before we go, is there something that you would like to share that we haven't asked the question, or do you have just a few top tips for somebody to just start with, or a thought or an idea that you just want to, that final gold nugget that you would like to share before we sort of leave off?
The biggest thing I can say is give yourself grace. Be kind to yourself. We're our own worst critic, so like I said, it's hard to do, but if you make a habit out of catching yourself, when you do something and you just say, oh, that was dumb, stop yourself and just say, okay, well, that could have been done differently. Just change the tone and start catching yourself. Because we got enough people that are ready to jump out and beat us up. We really don't need to beat ourselves up. But when you create that balance and stuff, and you create that time for you, you will find that you are healthier in general, because you've alleviated some of that stress, the anxiety. You can function better, you can think better, which will make you more successful in your relationships, in your business. But it all starts with you. So it's not selfish. I always say it's essential for a healthier you. You have got to put yourself first, even if it's just a few minutes a time. Read a self-help book or follow somebody that inspires you. Surround yourself with those people that are going to inspire you and lift you up. And sometimes you have to have those hard conversations, and we might find them hard to have them with your family, but it's not necessarily to deride a wedge. You may have a whole different dynamic and a better understanding And you might have a whole total new relationship that you just absolutely love, but you won't know unless you have those conversations and you do it. But don't wait for tragedy to strike. I mean, do something today when those things come up. If you take care of yourself, you will be able to handle them and deal with them better.
And I asked for some gold nuggets, and you gave us a good few gold nuggets. And part of self-care, and as you said, is when trauma does strike or something does happen, a massive change, it is about resilience, and self-care is very much about that. And we really appreciate you sharing your time, literally your time, with us today. Where can people find you if they want to reach out, if they want to connect with you? Where can people find you?
So I live a lot on Facebook and YouTube. I do have a website, whitesandselfcare.com, that they can go to, but I would love for people to join my White Sand Self-Care Community Facebook group. Join it, introduce yourself, tell them what you do. I really designed that group for people to interact and to get to know them. And I do a live interview for 15 minutes, like every Friday, so people can get to know you, because I think people resonate better when they get to hear from you, hear your story, they can resonate with you. And if you want to follow all the different speakers, the different holistic things that have come up, I've got a lot of great speakers. You can go to YouTube or my Facebook page for Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross. That goes every Monday at 1 p.m. Central Time, but it's also on e360tv.com. It's like Netflix. You can dial her up anytime. Just look for the Voyage to Vitality channel on the Achieve TV network, and you will find Mindful Mondays. And I'd love to hear from people. So any kind of feedback, suggestions, or if you need help with connecting someone, I may know someone. So happy to connect.
And that's a lot of information, but don't worry, all the links will be in the comments, so you don't have to go on to rewind and catch that all. So thank you so much. And it's been a real pleasure to have you here, really digging into the self-care and why we need to do it and what it's about. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing your time. And for our listeners, if there's any ideas that you do for self-care, or have you started to do self-care, or would you like to know more about self-care, please reach out and let us know. And best of all, if you have any tips on what you do for self-care, share those as well, because we would love to know. As you guys know, Lenka and I are on our own journey, and we are finding our own ways of doing things, so we might be using your idea to see if that works with us. Until next time, talk to you soon.
If you enjoyed listening to our conversation, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe. We would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and write a short review.